Hey everybody, this is NYC Geek Society, John here and Victor, and today we will be reviewing Star Trek Beyond. Actually, I will be reviewing Star Trek Beyond because this is one of the movies on Vic's boycott list,
Mm-hmm.
just like Ghostbusters and Batman vs Superman.
Yes.
So the same format as last week is going to happen, like our review for Ghostbusters, where I'm going to talk about the movie and what I liked and didn't like it about it and critique it. And Victor is more going to ask me questions and also describe a little bit beforehand why he refuses to see this movie. So I guess Victor, would you like to start?
All right. So, Star Trek Beyond is on my boycott list. The reason for that is because of Star Trek Into Darkness. Now, Star Trek Into Darkness is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, and I felt that it was absolutely offensive to the Star Trek franchise. And I don't really know what they were thinking. I know that Roberto Orci is a conspiracy kook, so he makes sure that the whole false flag thing ended up in the movie, where what's his name? Who was the main bad guy? Peter Weller's character was like he was a George Bush clone, obviously, even with a Southern accent, even though his daughter had a British accent for some reason. And they turned one of the characters from the original Star Trek, who was meant to be, importantly, very, very cautionary, meaning not to mess with eugenics, because what's going to happen is you can't put the genie back into the bottle, and if you create Supermen, they're going to want to take you over. So Khan was supposed to be as bad as Adolf Hitler or Stalin, any one of those people. He was never really supposed to be a sympathetic figure ever, and we saw what happened when Kirk really didn't finish the job, and he stranded Khan on that planet. So we got to see Wrath of Khan, where he almost destroys everything all over again because he gets his hand on the Genesis project, which is the ultimate weapon in the universe at that time. So, I mean, it really is that Khan is too dangerous to survive. But comes into darkness, and somehow he became some British white guy all of a sudden, right? And he's sympathetic because he just wants to save his people, and he's being used as a tool by the real enemy, which is George Bush. I mean, seriously. So, I mean, even the premise was bad. They stole the whole helicopter attack scene from Godfather 3. You're going to steal from a movie? Steal from a good one, not a bad one.
And it was so obvious, yeah.
I don't know. So, I mean, those are just a couple of the problems out with the movie. Now, the worst of all is that already Khan, it's a bad guy, becomes a messianic figure because his blood cures death. And for some reason, McCoy finds this out because for some reason he got into his head that he should inject Khan's blood into a dead tribble, which came back to life. I mean, McCoy needs new hobbies. But anyway, so that saved freaking Kirk's life. And, you know, the thing about the original Star Trek was that we had 79 episodes with these characters. 78, 79 episodes with these characters. We got to know them over that many hours. Almost 80 hours. Plus the movies, we're talking almost 100 hours that we spent with these characters. So we got to know them well. But even by the time of Khan, when Spock dies, that was a real emotional moment because it's been so much time with these people. 15, 16 years at that time. Not so at Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. You know what I mean? It's too soon to do this in the second movie. And if you're going to steal from a good movie, which is fine, but it's too soon for that. So those are just some of my problems. So because of the fact that death should no longer exist because Khan's blood cures death, because you can transwarp from planet to planet, who needs starships? All you gotta do is warp. All that was part of Into Darkness. So to me, that entirely ruined that galaxy, that timeline, anything involving the Star Trek franchise. Just that it ruins it. Nothing they can do from here will save it. Say, kill it, burn it to the ground, and I'm done with this incarnation of Star Trek. I know you said before, well, what if they just ignore it? You can't ignore it.
Well, this is what I'm going to get into. So, I 100% agree with everything that Victor says about Into Darkness. I think that that's just a terrible movie for all the reasons that he said. But what made me want to give this franchise, this rebooted franchise, a second chance was that they got rid of all of the writers um, and the director, which was J.J. Abrams, for this third movie. So anyone besides the actors that were involved with Into Darkness weren't a part of this project. Originally, Roberto Orsi was going to direct, and I wouldn't have seen that. But when they kind of got rid of him for the director's chair, they still have him as a producer, but that made me say, okay, it seems like they know that we don't like Into Darkness. It was rated, I think, among Star Trek fans as the worst of the Star Trek movies. And so I was willing to give it a shot. Um, I also got some hope when I found out that Simon Pegg was going to be a writer. I, really enjoy every one of the movies that he's written. And I know that, Victor, you were upset about when he was defending Orsi and literally said, fuck you.
Yeah, I mean,
to,
that was a quote.
the
Fuck,
fans.
fuck you.
But I take that with, okay, he's defending a guy that he knows. So I'm not going to hold that against the guy. And I was willing to go into this movie with an open mind. So let's just get into, I guess, my thoughts about it. Number one, I actually do really like this film. They do, right off the bat, seem to do what I said. They don't acknowledge that Into Darkness has happened at all. They never mention it, never mention Khan.
Of course,
nothing.
Of course they don't, but they're not going to.
So I think that if you want to, you can literally just pretend that movie never happened. You can watch the Star Trek 2009 and watch this movie, and you would never even know that you were missing anything.
No, it's like sitting out to dinner with somebody with a gigantic goiter sticking out of their neck. It's there.
No,
there's
but
nothing you could do. It's there.
In this world now, I mean, it's not unusual to just kind of retcon things. I don't think. Look at what we're doing with the Alien franchise when Neil, I can never pronounce his last name.
Blomkamp?
Yeah. is going to be essentially directing a new Alien 3. Where
yeah, but this is, at least that's like a total reboot.
Not really. It's going to take into account the first two Alien movies and then have a third one as if 3 and Resurrection never existed.
Right.
I think that in this day and age, with people's familiarity with comic books especially, we're used to just kind of ignoring something that everyone involved agrees just didn't work. So I think that you could do that. But just
I'm not going to.
Well, again, talking about this movie on its own merits.
All right.
I have some notes.
Before you get into that, again, and we talk about then what is there to try to sell it to me, which is the trailer. Okay? And again, when you saw this trailer, it was what I expected. It was the Fast and the Furious in space.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very disappointing trailer. It looked like moronic action, which Star Trek is not supposed to be.
Right. And
so that's the trailer, which is supposed to convince me to go see this and give this movie a chance.
I would like to talk about that stuff after the review, too. So, first thing that I think that I need to bring up is something that was in the trailers, so it's not really that much of a spoiler. Oh yeah, by the way, there's going to be spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen Star Trek yet and you want to, you don't want spoilers, just come back and watch this later. If you don't care, or if you've already seen the movie,
or you're like me.
Or if you're like Victor and wear funny hats all the time.
It's not a funny hat. It's a cool hat, alright? It's a pork pie hat.
So yeah, the first thing I want to bring up that was in the trailers was the Enterprise being destroyed. And I'm going to go into a little bit. yeah, again, I'm gonna go into a little bit why I made the connection of possibly why they did that. But what I want to talk about is actually what you just mentioned about the whole Kirk and Spock thing of Kirk almost dying,
Oh,
where
he did die.
oh right, he did die, yeah, but just that in the original franchise, in the original timeline, the Enterprise gets destroyed in Star Trek 3.
Correct.
And again, it's like what you said. We had over 100 hours with these characters before that happened.
Mm-hmm.
The Enterprise was already an extremely iconic vehicle, or
It was a character, really.
yeah. And so when you see that being destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
it hurts.
It was an emotional moment. Yes.
It physically hurts. And again, I just don't know if this movie earned doing that again. Now, the reason why I think that they did do this, and I'll backtrack after about other things about the movie, but at the end of the movie, they introduce the Enterprise, what's the number, like 1701 A, which was the starship that they had in Star Trek 4 and on with the original movies. So I think maybe the reason why they did this is it's the third movie in this franchise. So they did it because it was destroyed in the third movie in that franchise. But that's not an excuse. It seemed more like an excuse for incredible special effects. And I don't feel like it was earned. And it did play a part in contributing to the plot where they went with things. But I think that there would have been a way of getting around it.
Yeah, but they didn't get the Enterprise back in the same movie. You know, it took another movie to get it back.
Right.
You know, this is stupid.
So it's a little bizarre. Now, after the Enterprise gets destroyed, they crash land on this alien planet where they were originally going there because they were taking a vacation at this satellite town called it was actually called Yorktown, which I found interesting because I think that in real life was probably like a port town.
It's probably one of the most important
cities
in American history because that's where George Washington's army defeated the British and pretty much brought the end of the American Revolution. It's where America gained its independence, and it was also the name of one of the original starships.
Ah, there you go.
And an important aircraft carrier. So every American should know Yorktown.
Yorktown. So they go to Yorktown for a little bit of reprieve. And while they're there, the Federation kind of introduces a case where this captain had her crew and ship crash land on this planet, and she needed a starship that would be good for navigating uncharted territory to locate and rescue her crew. So, of course, they call upon Captain Kirk, and they go off to try to find her crew. She
lost her crew.
Right. So when they approached the planet,
so how could she lose her crew?
Basically, she said that I don't remember the details, but something happened where it crashed on this planet.
Okay.
And so when they get there, it ends up that they get attacked, and it ends up that she had
attacked by who?
Supposedly made a deal with the baddie of the film, Krall, I think is his name.
What is he? What race is he? What is he?
Well, it goes into that stuff later. At this point, he's unidentified race.
He looks human.
No.
Okay. All right.
I mean, he's humanoid like everybody is, but he's not human.
Okay.
And it turns out that she had made a deal with him that if she brought Kirk and crew there, the Enterprise there, that she would get her people back. And there's further backstabbing and stuff.
So she's kind of a traitor.
She's a traitor, right?
To save her crew.
Right. But So in order for them to eventually escape, again sticking with why possibly the Enterprise was destroyed, is they find on this planet the USS Franklin. Now, do you remember what the USS Franklin was? Because it sounded very familiar to me, and so I looked it up.
The Franklin.
The Franklin apparently was a ship that was mentioned in multiple series, and it took place before the first Enterprise in the prequel series with Scott Bakula, where they mentioned that the Franklin existed before that.
Right, okay.
And it turns out that the baddie in this movie, he used to be human, and he had found leftover technology from the culture that used to be there on how to extend life and to change his appearance and the remaining crew that he had. And so he became this kind of monster. That's why he was like an unknown species, because it didn't previously exist and he came from being human.
Right, okay.
And
so
you find that out at the end of the movie. Now,
so he was a captain of the Franklin?
He was the captain of the Franklin.
Okay.
And the main theme of this film is what he is trying to say is that the Federation will bring across the destruction of life. Because he believes that there's not strength in unity, but weakness in unity. When you have all the same people teamed up in all the same places, you can destroy them easily. And apparently he got to thinking this way because before the Federation was formed, he was a soldier. And, he fought in wars and battles, and he fought against the Klingons.
How can it be before the Federation was formed?
Because whatever device he used to become what he became and his remaining crew, it extended his life hundreds of years. So he was a soldier before the Federation was formed. And
But the Federation... This is not making any sense.
In the 2100s.
Okay, so Federation didn't exist before the humans from Earth got involved?
So the Franklin, from what I understand, was one of the first ships to go out into space.
Okay.
And that happened right after, I guess, the Federation had begun.
Okay.
So he was...
He remembers the time before the Federation.
Right. But not before, but after the Federation was formed, then...
Right, but this is not... Now we're straying. This is not the original...
Why?
This is just not the original canon. I mean, they can do whatever they want in this...
But when did the Federation form? It was like the 2100s, right?
Well, yeah, but the thing is that they changed so many things. Like the Federation discovered the Vulcans, not the Vulcans discovering Earth.
Yeah, but that was in the previous thing.
I know that. So they can do whatever they want here. So this.
Yeah, but it was still the 2100s.
This is a total mess.
We'll go into why you think why, but so it was like I think it was like the 2160s or something. He and his crew go off and they find this planet, and they end up getting deserted there, and they kind of abandon him and his crew there. And he can't get in touch with the Federation now, and so he forms this bitterness of the Federation, and he forms this bitterness too because he never apparently wanted to be a captain in the first place. He felt it as sort of a cushy position, and he was a soldier, and he believed conflict causes the advancement of technology in society, and when everyone's united, that's when things will become static and people stop caring. And so while he was abandoned there, he found this technology to extend his life, and what kept him alive was this idea that eventually he would seek revenge on the Federation that changed the world for what he felt was the worst and abandoned him and his crew. And so eventually he makes his way back to Yorktown with the stealing of the technology of the Enterprise and all of our crew and all that stuff. And we have a big fight in Yorktown, and Kirk ends up defeating the guy, and everyone lives happily ever after. Kirk actually says something that I thought was a really interesting quote, where he says to him that you need to change or you end up fighting the same battles. And it sticks with my personal philosophy of why I actually really enjoy the Star Trek universe, is that it is a universe where we have stopped conflict of fighting amongst ourselves. And instead of war and conflict fueling the advancement of technology in us as a species, our endless curiosity is what drives us forward, and our desire to explore. And I personally think that in order for humanity to continue to exist, we will eventually need to evolve to that point. Otherwise, we will destroy ourselves. So I really appreciated that, and I thought it was an interesting, conflict to bring up as a story. But still, what really bothers me, again, going back to the Enterprise being destroyed, is that for a viewer that didn't watch the original series and didn't see the original movies, they won't have that feeling of attachment. And so I feel like for them, it's just going to be like a kind of moment. Now, for me, another reason why I disagree with it is that me seeing the original series and seeing the movies, I have a very strong emotional connection to that ship. And so to see it destroyed again was very hard to watch.
It's like watching Bruce Wayne's parents get killed again.
Right. It's just like, why are you putting me through that? And I understand that I guess it was a reason for them to bring up this USS Franklin thing and for them to take off in that and have this funny scene too where I guess there's like sort of old classical music on there. So they bring back that Beastie Boys song at certain points in the movie where in order to distract this swarm of enemies that they have, they've realized they need a loud, high-pitched frequency, and so they use that. And it ended up being a funny and interesting scene, but I feel like that there would have been ways to integrate that to just using the Enterprise, and I don't really understand why they needed to destroy that, because I feel like with new viewers, it's not going to have any emotional impact, and with old viewers like me and you, it's too much that it needs to be earned, like in Star Trek 3 it was earned. So that was...
Even then, you didn't get the Enterprise back. Not till the end of 4.
To the end of 4. Right, you're right, because they were
They don't give it to you back right away.
They were on the Klingon ship.
Yeah, the Klingon bird of prey.
Yeah, and that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
So it was an important thing because when the Enterprise was destroyed, it was destroyed. And at the end of that movie, it was still destroyed. And we went through a whole nother movie without it.
Something that I would like to mention though, that character Jayla, the one with the white skin and the black markings and all that you see in the trailers.
What, the white Navi?
Yeah, God. She, number one, is gorgeous, but number two, she is awesome and a very funny kind of character, an interesting character, and I could just watch an entire spin-off of her. And it seems like that at the end of the movie, they do bring her on as a member of the crew. So I'm excited to see more of that character and where they could go with that. Because she had a very interesting backstory. And she's one of those characters where she's never really met humans before. So, for example, when Scotty introduces himself, because he's the first one to meet her, he says, my name is Montgomery Scott. And she says, oh, hello, Mr. Montgomery Scott. And he says, well, just call me Scotty. And she says, okay, Montgomery Scotty. And so through the entire rest of the movie, she's calling him Montgomery Scotty.
More from Orc humor.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But I like that. I think it's cute. So I would like to see more of her. And I'm excited about that possibility. Something that they also acknowledged was the death of Leonard Nimoy, which I thought was good. Where early on in the movie, when they go on to Yorktown, Spock gets approached by some Vulcans and gets taken aside, and you see that they basically tell him that Admiral Spock has passed away, and it's a very touching moment. And then
how do they know?
Well, you get
Are
the
they
well.
communicating with Spock also?
Well, also, I believe that they did acknowledge that he was.
He was back on Vulcan. Or
Yeah, he
something?
was helping to build New Vulcan.
Right.
And so, basically, Spock then decides that maybe he should continue that and leave the starship. And so, at the beginning of the movie, he's thinking about leaving, and Kirk also is thinking about leaving because he feels like that it's become too normal and kind of. He actually says episodic. But of course, by the end of the movie, they realize, again, with this whole theme of unification versus anarchy or independence, that they work best as a team, and they both decide to stay. And at the end of the movie, Spock gets the remaining objects, I guess, of Admiral Spock, and he opens up a box, and you see a picture of the older crew with Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner, and all of them together. So I thought that was kind of nice as well. Um, Again, something else that was sort of advertised that I really enjoyed was Spock and Bones together for most of the movie as kind of a duo, and it leads to some great hilarious moments. And I've always found interesting that relationship. And I had read an interview with Justin Lin as well, where he was saying that growing up, he always wanted to see more of Spock and Bones together, and so he was very excited to have that in this movie. Just they could to have that love-hate relationship with each other. So it's very enjoyable, even just for that. Um, what else? So yeah, altogether. Oh, at the end of the movie, they also had "In Memory of Leonard Nimoy," and right after that, they said "For Anton," because of course, Anton. What was his last name? I can't remember. The guy who played Chekhov, passed away a few months ago. So that I thought that was in good taste as well. And so overall, I thought it was a very good Star Trek movie. Um, Again, there was no warping from planet to planet. There was no tribble con blood. It's as if Into Darkness never happened. My one complaint with the movie, again, was that I don't feel that destroying the Enterprise was earned. And for me, that was too emotional of a scene to watch and didn't have enough payoff for it. And I feel like that there could have been ways around it without having that traumatic thing happen. um, so altogether, I would give this movie maybe a 9 out of 10.
What?
I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was at least just as good as the Star Trek 2009 reboot. I felt true to the characters. I like that they go back to more philosophical themes, such as unity versus anarchy.
Was anarchy?
Right, because that's what was his name? Kroll?
I didn't see it.
I can't remember his name. That's what he was pitching for, that unity is weakness. And, Kirk and crew and humanity is all about unity is strength. And Scotty even says at one point that his mother used to tell him that it's easier that you can't that it's easier to break one twig as opposed to a bunch of twigs, And so I appreciate that. Also, there was that scene that you see in the trailer of Bones and Kirk having a drink together for his birthday, which is of course a riff off of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And I appreciate that as well. And so it felt, again, like the...
What do you mean, Wrath of Khan?
Oh, was it Wrath of Khan that they did? Okay. Sorry, I got that confused. But I felt that, like the 2009 reboot, it was much more true to the character dynamics and to the soul of what Star Trek is about: hope and unity and humanity and aiming for this future where we're no longer trying to all kill each other, where again Into Darkness was just the opposite of what Star Trek was about, where it was about corruption and you can't trust anybody and the dark side of humanity, which isn't supposed to really exist anymore.
Well, I mean, it did in the original. I mean, don't forget, there was a lot of war in the original. There was corruption. There was all these themes that exist in the original.
with humans against each other, though, I don't recall.
No, it wasn't humans against each other. Don't
That's
forget.
what I'm saying.
Star Trek was written by the World War II generation.
Which is what I'm saying.
No
'cause
matter how
Into
united you
Darkness-
are, there's always an exterior force that might bring war onto you.
Right, which is what happens in this movie too. But where Into Darkness went wrong, and you and I both agreed, was that it had someone within the Federation, a human being, end up being the guy that betrays everybody. And that's something that we're led to believe would not exist anymore. That humanity itself has evolved out of that.
Right, but that's new.
Well, that's where you and I tend to disagree. Where again, we've had arguments about this off camera, and so I think that in a lot of ways you would agree with this baddie that thinks that it's inevitable, that it's the nature of people to fight against each other, and we should be doing that. Whereas for me, I think that
I didn't say we should be.
well,
Always strive for better.
okay, I'll agree to that.
Always strive for better.
But for me, I think that either we have to evolve to that vision, or
I mean,
we will eventually end.
that's why the Enterprise in science fiction is one of the most powerful and warlike ships that exist, because while ostensibly it was a ship for exploration of the galaxy, the real world and the real universe of World War II and the Cold War. I mean, there was the realistic aspect that you would have to fight all the time to achieve your goals, and that's why, that's why that was a prevailing theme. That's why the Klingons existed.
Right.
You know, they were the one of the exterior forces that brought war, and even then, even in Errand of Mercy, one of the best Star Trek episodes of all, which took place on Organia, where.
Is that the one where they destroy their own people?
No, that's the one where Kirk and Spock end up on a planet full of these meek people, and then the Klingons take over.
Right.
And Kirk and Spock are like partisans, and then at the end, both the Federation and the Klingon Empire were ready to fight. They wanted to fight at the end, but the Organians stepped in and made their weapons inoperable. So even Gene Roddenberry knew that humanity, even at that point, would not be there 100%. So he brought in the Organians as another exterior force to remind everybody that this is what you should be striving for.
Right.
It's because the Organians were so far advanced of humanity, or the Klingons at that point. So, I mean, it was still there. Even in the original, those were things to strive for. Humanity had not arrived there yet. And may never. But again, Roddenberry's message is these are things that you always have to strive for.
Right, which is what I felt was very well represented in this film, and completely wrong in the last one. So again, I feel like that this is Star Trek back to, form. And again, I would like you to see it eventually. I'll probably.
Is there a motorcycle in it?
Yeah, just for one scene, but it was supposed to be a distraction for the enemy, and it worked. It worked for the film, I think.
How come they don't have hovercrafts?
No, he found the motorcycle on the Franklin, and he said that his dad used to have one, and so that's why he knew how to ride it. So they actually kind of, acknowledge that kind of thing.
All right, so you gave it a 9.
Yeah, I'd give it a 9.
I still give it a 10 on the heat meter, but I will see it eventually. But again, like Batman vs. Superman, like Ghostbusters, it will be in a secondary market, so they make no money from my participation. And I'm only seeing it for completion's sake. So, I don't know. When the time comes, I'll watch it, and if it's better, then Into Darkness is still not saying much, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm saying I think it's at least just as good as the Star Trek 2009, which you really enjoyed.
I did enjoy that. That's before they ruined everything.
Right. But if they're pretending that that didn't happen, then what's the difference?
I'm not pretending.
And it's a completely different staff of writers and directing.
I know this sounds very convoluted, and again, I have to see it and see what the political undertones of it are, because it's one of those things where the Federation is stand-in for the U.S. and the U.S. is responsible for everything that bad happens in the world. If that's a theme, then I'm definitely not going to like it.
Well, that's just something that this one baddie thinks, but that's common, I think, in the Star Trek universe of just aliens not liking that we're trying to sort of co-opt everybody.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Something else that actually I would like to bring up was just something I didn't think was bad, but something that I think could have been better if they did it a different way. Is at the end, as I stated before, Kirk is trying to kind of talk to the guy, saying, basically that we have to change in order to move forward and all that. And it looks like that maybe at some point he's going to change the guy's mind, but he doesn't. And what really kind of bothered me about that is that in the original series, Kirk was known for talking people into things, and talking people into changing their minds. I mean, that's what's so incredible about his character, where you have these characters who are like, how could anyone ever change their mind about the world? And then Kirk will give an amazing speech, and you'll be like, he would have changed my mind. He's even talked several machines into destroying themselves. Like, he's a master at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of bothered me that, like, you're telling me that Captain Kirk can't do that here?
Not this Captain Kirk. Now with these writers, let's just face it, the writers of the 1960s, science fiction writers that wrote the original Star Trek were great writers. And
well, yeah, I mean, they're classics.
Yeah, and that sort of writing just does not exist anymore. And it was written by World War II veterans. And again, this goes back. The original Star Trek was written by people who actually did have to make life and death decisions in real life. So some of that ends up on the show and in scripts that they wrote for other shows, especially Gene Roddenberry, who served on a bomber. So, but that doesn't happen anymore. None of these people. That's why I hate Next Generation so much. None of these people ever served in the military. They don't get an idea that these are careers and this is not a soap opera. You know what I mean? It's just it's just very like trite and bland. And if Kirk is thinking of quitting because it's episodic, it's like the original Kirk never would have thought of quitting.
Well, that was the thing too that we brought up even about the 2009 reboot that they changed about his character where. In the original series, he had served before.
Yeah, he's a seasoned officer.
A seasoned officer, and he went into this because of his passion for wanting to be captain.
He gave up a whole regular life to have a career.
Whereas in this timeline, he only really does it because he wants to live up to the memory of his father.
And he bumbles into it.
Right.
So he's no original Kirk in any way, shape, or form. So it's just the writing is never going to be as good. Like I said, I like the first of these new movies.
Yeah.
And because I accepted it as something new, and if they captured some of it for me, that was fine, and they did.
Yeah, and I feel like it's the same for this.
But they totally destroyed that with Into Darkness.
Again, my recommendation is just pretend that Into Darkness never happened and enjoy this film. Well, we'll see. Again, I think that once Ghostbusters and Star Trek come out into the secondary market, I'll probably end up purchasing each of those movies anyway because I personally enjoyed it. You'll watch it then, and then we'll do follow-up videos.
Yeah. Now, I just want to say that I was absolutely correct about what happened with Ghostbusters. It never was number one in the box office. It dropped 53% in its second week, and it dropped again another 53%. So this week it only made $10 million. It just squeaked over $100 million total gross, like $105 million, which is in 3 weeks of distribution with a $144 million budget, essentially a flop. Now, Star Trek is having the same problem. It just got $106 million.
I thought that they're number one though.
In 2 weeks.
I saw a trailer that said that they're number one in the U.S. I think
Well, last week.
maybe.
But they dropped almost 60% in their second week. So they're at 106 million, also 105 million. Ghostbusters 106 million.
So if you were a betting man, you would say, what is the likelihood of a Ghostbusters sequel?
Well, I think they're still going to go ahead with it, but I don't know if they may just change up the whole crew.
Really, you think that they would?
Well, this is a flop. It's a financial flop. No matter how you look at it, it's a financial failure.
So you think that they might try like a different take?
Well, yeah, they'll keep the same characters and the same premise, keeping the same universe, but they may change up the writing and the directing.
Right. Because
it's going to need it. This is a financial flop. And Star Trek Beyond is not doing that well either. To drop 60% in the second weekend is very bad. So even if it's over $100 million, and that's like a $185 million budget. So these movies are not doing what they really wanted it to do. They're very underperforming a lot. Which again, I'm happy for because I said, if you pay for junk, they're going to keep giving you junk. So for everybody else who's with me and is refusing to see these movies, thank you.
But what I'm saying is that these movies aren't junk. They're good. They're good movies.
You're a nice guy, John.
I am a nice guy, but
Nice guy.
I would still say when a bad movie's a bad movie, or when I think it's a bad movie. I thought both of these were good movies.
You don't think they could have been better?
I mean, most movies could be better.
You wouldn't have been happier with a better Ghostbusters movie.
I
You would have been happier with a better Star Trek movie.
I think that, again, the things that I pointed out, if it were done differently, for example with Star Trek, if they didn't destroy the Enterprise, and they had Kirk able to convince the guy not to kill everybody, it would have been marginally better. But I think that the goods far outweighs the bad. And so I enjoyed them. I thought that it scratched the Star Trek itch that I have. You know what I mean?
I'm not convinced. So you failed to convince me 2 weeks in a row.
All right, let's beam me up, Scotty. Let's finish this.
All right.
All right. So like, share, subscribe. Tell your captain about us. I don't know. I'm trying to make Star Trek references, not working. Just tell people. Tell people to watch our show. And go see Star Trek and Ghostbusters.
Don't see it.